We thought the most difficult and central topic of the two witnesses was largely understood and already explained in video form. Brother John laid the foundation in his very important basic video when Michael stands up, and that understanding was further refined in the video Armageddon and the Second Woe. But in mid-October 2025, we received a dream that said we must restudy some topics that began with Orion, mainly Revelation 11 and the timelines of Daniel 12. We are, of course, speaking about the 1260, the 1290, and the 1335 days, which have their reflection in the book of Revelation in chapter 11. We did exactly that, and we came across something fascinating that I would like now to present to you. Very briefly, as a refresher, who are the two witnesses in the firmament, really? Let's read. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks, standing before the God of the earth. It took 15 years of studying to understand that the two witnesses consist of 4 points. The two solstice points as olive trees, and the two equinox points as lampstands. These stand before the sun, which represents the bridegroom. So it's about the relationship of the witnesses in the form of these 4 points of the earth to the bridegroom as the sun. We get the same explanation in Zechariah 4. Let's read. Then answered I and said unto him, What are these two olive trees upon the right side of the candlestick, and upon the left side thereof? And I answered again and said unto him, What be these two olive branches which through the two golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves? And he answered me and said, Knowest thou not what these be? And I said, No, my Lord. Then said he, These are the two anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth. You see here the same wording as in Revelation. They stand before the Lord of the whole earth. Here you see how the two olive trees deliver the oil through the two pipes to the 7-branched lampstand. But in Revelation, we read that of the 7 lampstands of the churches, only 2 churches are without fault, Smyrna and Philadelphia. Now, where do we find these 4 points of the two witnesses in the firmament? You know it, of course, but here is the picture once again for completeness. Once again, after years of research, we have correctly understood that the 2 lampstands are the 2 equinox points, one in Virgo, shown exactly here by this symbol, and the other in Pisces, right here. And the 2 olive trees of the 2 witnesses are the 2 solstice points, one at the club of Orion, which is made of wood, so exactly here, and the other at the cross, at the galactic equator, where the enemies of Jesus are, exactly here. Here you see again the ecliptic, where we can clearly see the 4 points and the 2 pipes. The Orion olive tree point supplies the lampstand point in Virgo. That points to the Church of Philadelphia, the group that will pass through alive. And the cross olive tree point supplies the lampstand point in Pisces. That points to the church of Smyrna, the martyr church. These are the 4 points of the 2 witnesses in the firmament, as a refresher, or rather as a renewed clarification for you. Please remember this timeline that Brother John presented in the video, When Michael Stands Up. There, he decoded many of the time references for the 2 witnesses. Everything begins with the publication of the Orion message on January 23, 2010, which we understood as the beginning of the prophesying in sackcloth of the 2 witnesses. Orion represents the high priest, Jesus, in the heavenly sanctuary, who ministered for us before God the Father for 1813 years in the holy place, and from 1844 or 1846 onward in the most holy place. We have written and reported about this topic and the investigative judgment of the dead and the living. You can already see that this interpretation is based on Orion. We understood in this context that because there are 2 witnesses, all these time periods must be doubled, both the 1260 and the 1290, and also the 1335 days. That led us to dates that pointed to important publications and teachings of our ministry, White Cloud Farm, connected to the heavenly high priest in Orion. First, we used the publication date of the Orion message, as already mentioned, for the time of prophesying in sackcloth. The period in which the 2 witnesses are dead then began with the first publication date of the article, The Hour of Decision, in English, which was a summary of all the work we had done up to our sacrificial prayer for more time in 2016, and the transition to the new website. From that point on, the 2 1335-day cycles also began. But then we found signs in heaven. Suddenly, from March 15, 2024 onward, we saw the rising of the 4 points of the 2 witnesses. In a period of only about 140 days, 4 comets appeared, each entering the head regions of those constellations that mark the 4 points of the 2 witnesses. We explained the details of this thoroughly in the video, When Michael Stands Up. With this overview, I only want to remind you where our current level of understanding comes from, and why we applied the times in a doubled manner. After the Spirit of Life had entered these 4 points, we looked out for the next verses in Revelation 11, where and when the call and the ascension of the 2 witnesses could be indicated in the firmament. It has to be visible in some form, because verse 12 says that their enemies saw them. Perhaps you remember that these 2 novae appeared in fitting constellations and were actually visible to the naked eye, which is extremely rare. They were connected by the path of comet C2020F3 Neowise, which passes through Orion, representing its call to ascend. We reported on this in the video Armageddon and the Second Woe, and this image excerpt also comes from that video. And we were also able to explain verse 13 with all its details, while the two witness novae were still visible, rising upward. In the picture, you can see exactly what appeared during those days. Three-eye Atlas, showing us what the Father and Jesus decided in heaven. The sealing of the 144,000 is finished. No more delay. The end of Jesus' intercessory ministry as high priest has come, and the censer was thrown to the earth as a consequence. The Father and the Son have made a decision. Verse 14, from this witness's perspective, is still open. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. That has not yet been completely fulfilled. And the second woe is precisely this disastrous event, where 1/3 of humanity will die because of fire, smoke, and brimstone. As I said, be careful. It may refer to a physical war event, but it could also refer to a spiritual event or a spiritual battle triggered by this false revival movement through Charlie Kirk. Keep watchful eyes in both directions. Also, the seventh trumpet and the third woe, which are written in Revelation 11 in the chapter of the two witnesses, have not yet been fulfilled. And right here, the dream from God comes into play, where we receive the hint to think again about these viewpoints of the two witnesses. So far, the Orion witness has spoken, where the Father and the Son work together. There we use the timelines doubled. But we also have another opposite witness point in the Maseroth, where the cross is located, pointing to the one faithful and true witness who brought his sacrifice for us on earth. Could it be that if we ask this earth witness for his perspective on the timelines, we'll get dates for earthly events related to the second woe? And it has already become clear that this time we apply the timelines from Daniel and Revelation 11 only once. So let's go to Daniel 12. First, remember the image of the oath in Daniel 12. Jesus stands above the river and raises both hands. This river is not only a symbol of his blood, but it also represents the time before the investigative judgment for the one witness on one side and the time of the investigative judgment that began for the other witness. It marks the transition when Christ entered from the holy place into the most holy place on the night of October 22 to 23, 1844. The clear dividing line between the time before the investigative judgment and the investigative judgment period itself. Jesus lifts both hands and addresses his Father, the Ancient of Days. Thus, two persons of the Godhead stand together at the center of the oath. Jesus even swears by his Father, as the text explicitly confirms. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever. Who lives forever? The Father. So Jesus swears by his Father. In the oath, there are therefore two persons of the Godhead, the Father and the Son. And because both are speaking, We counted the times mentioned there twice. But if we now look at the same truth from the perspective of the cross, where Jesus is represented at the solstice point in Sagittarius at the cross, then we recognize that Jesus was alone on earth to bring his sacrifice. But after his resurrection, he ascended to heaven, and the Holy Spirit came down. Jesus said in John 16, verse 7, "Nevertheless, I tell you the truth. It is expedient for you that I go away. For if I go not away, the Comforter will not come unto you. But if I depart, I will send him unto you." So through the whole plan of salvation, it's a rule. The Father is never left alone. Either Jesus is on earth to bring the once-for-all sacrifice, or the Holy Spirit is on earth to help the church and dwell in us. One of the Godhead is always with us, but two are in heaven, united in testimony. That is why Jesus, as the high priest in Orion, speaks twice, in the name of the Father and in his own name. But on earth, only one of the two witnesses gives testimony at a time, either the Son or the Holy Spirit. That is why Jesus says that everything is established by two or three witnesses: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Therefore, none of the time frames we have presented so far are wrong. We only have to view all 4 points of the two witnesses in their different contexts and understand the testimony of the Godhead in its perfect interplay. So let's get started and examine this dream hint from God regarding the cross, where it is no longer about intercession in heaven, which we saw with the Orion witness, but the cross stands for the final redemption through his sacrifice, meaning when the ascension of all the redeemed will take place. Here, I have a small table that is meant to show the connecting key between the different time references in Daniel 12 and Revelation 11, which time references belong together. All of this has, of course, been explained in detail in Brother John's video. But there's one verse that we rarely use. Yet this one must be mentioned for this earthly witness perspective. Let's read. "And there was given me a reed like unto a rod. And the angel stood, saying, Rise, and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. It's therefore the time that is said not to be measured. It's to be left out. We've never spoken much about this part, but it's actually reflected in this oath. I said earlier that Jesus stands at the river of the year 1844, and that the river separates the investigative judgment time from the time before. The 42 months at the beginning of Revelation 11 must belong to the witness who stands in the past. These are the 1260 years of papal supremacy. It's widely known that these 42 months represent the 1260 years of the Dark Middle Ages, during which the papacy ruled religiously and politically in Europe from AD 538 to 1798. We've spoken about this at length in our videos. In Revelation 13, we read about this first beast, that it received a seemingly deadly wound when General Berthier took Pope Pius VI captive. The supremacy of the papacy in Europe and its cruel persecution came to an end and did not return for a long time. Unfortunately, the verse also says that the papacy and its Catholic Church do not have the temple or represent the temple of God.